For the third year and counting, Richard Skipper has been celebrating the artists you love.
And what are some of the things that you've really run out of time? And we've got to talk about your latest. I want to go back a little bit, first of all, and celebrate a true legend.
Richard Skipper is all about celebrating life, art, and his guest body of work.
And did you pursue performing opportunities while you were in high school?
Please join us while he showcases these diverse and talented individuals. Here's Richard Skipper.
Happy Sunday night, everyone. And I'm hoping that Sandra McKee is going to be joining us this evening. She has a new Wi-Fi, and unfortunately, sometimes things happen and you have technical issues, and she's going to keep trying, and hopefully she's going to be joining us this evening. But tonight, we're going to be talking with a very special guest. I'm actually going to bring her on right away. Patrice McKenley, and she comes to us and to me especially through our dear friend Lena Katrakis. Now, for those of you who are part of the New York City cabaret scene, Lena Katrakis is a powerhouse entertainer. Lena Katrakis also happens to be my very dear friend. We are both Aquarians. We are both fellow South Carolinians. She was also my very first director in cabaret in New York. And a few weeks ago, she reached out to me and she said, "You have to meet my friend Patrice McKenley. I think you two are soulmates." And I don't know if Patrice will agree with this or not, but I think we are soulmates. We've already met through a couple of Zoom meetings, and we've gotten to know each other a little bit peripherally that way. We haven't met in person. And she was also there for me last week when I needed to have someone's ear to bend a little bit. So, Patrice, thank you and welcome. And I'm so thrilled that you're here today. And I hope that you will get a chance to meet Sandra in a few minutes as well.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really, really happy to be here. And yes, we definitely hit it off right away. And I love that. I really do. It's been great getting to know you.
Well, I want to begin. This is under the umbrella of a show that my series is called Richard Skipper Celebrates. And I want to ask, what is it that you are celebrating right now?
Oh, wow. Well, that's really interesting. Sounds silly. Maybe so trite, but during COVID, I did gain a few pounds and I'm finally on my way back down, that I can see on the scale. And I'm really happy about that.
No, I know that excitement. I know all about it.
I know. So I was happy to get on the scale today and see it going down a little because, a few years ago, I lost 75 pounds. So that was a huge victory for me, obviously. And
talk about letting that go.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. It was tough to let go, and I had tried for a really long time, but I finally was able to, and I don't want to go back there. And even those niggly, 10 pounds or so might not seem like a lot, but when you're, feeling really good and comfortable, I want to stay there, So anyway, I'm celebrating that. I'm celebrating that I'm almost finished with a chapter of a book I'm contributing to. So, and I've got two great girls. I've got a lot to celebrate, a lot to be grateful for.
That's great. And our word for today, I always pull a word each day that I focus on each day. And the word that I pulled today is connection. And it's a very important word, I think, especially now, because all of us have been going through COVID. We're now coming, hopefully, on the other side.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of trepidation in terms of how we go back into the world. Do we wear a mask? Do we not wear a mask? Do we go into this restaurant? Do we not?
Yeah.
What does the word connection mean for you, especially right now at this point in your life?
Well, I think of it in a very spiritual way. It means connecting with people where they are I mean, that's kind of what I do because I'm a life coach, and it's very important for me to connect and understand who they are, what they love, what makes them, so joyful. And it really means connecting to the heart of someone, connecting to who they really are and what they love, and kind of mirroring that back to them, meeting on that level, no matter who, no matter what,
Absolutely.
where.
Absolutely. Well, again, Kasira, I'm hoping that you're going to get here. I'm going to try to follow some of the tenets of her book and everything. But I always start with the random question, although she hates that I ask. She says, don't surprise me with any questions. But I'm going to surprise you with a random question. I haven't looked at the question, so I don't even know.
Oh, you actually pull a
I pull a
question.
question. And the
Okay.
question is, oh, I love this. Talk about connections. And this could be bringing up a lot of things because I know a little bit about your history. What's the wildest party that you've ever been to?
Oh my God. Honestly, I probably was in a blackout when I was there. I remember one St. Patrick's Day that I was, and it wasn't a party, it was at a bar, and I was just so wasted. It was, I mean, yeah, it can get very dark. It was, because most of the parties I've been to, I mean, I told you, and probably the audience should know that I've been clean and sober for 37 years.
Congratulations on that.
Most of the parties that I go to now are very tame. But a St. Patrick's Day in New York, just drinking a lot of bad liquor and, those cheap, just rock gut vodka or whatever, and doing a lot of drugs and, getting very violently ill. And well, sorry, I don't mean to take it to such a negative place.
No. Tonight, I mean, the topic that Kasira did come up with is going into the light from the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And so we may be going into some dark places. And I hope you don't mind. You said that these are some of your favorite topics anyway. So, and that was the random question. But do you mind if we talk about these things? Because my father, today is 20 years ago that my father passed away. My father did die of alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, he was 67 when he passed away. I look at my life, I'm 61. I feel like I have yet to get it even out of the gate. And hopefully I've got more than 7 more years left, 6 more years of my life, hopefully. But I look at my father's life and being cut off so short. And I know what my life was like in those 18 years of my life with my father. And I couldn't wait to get away. And it was also such a stigma growing up in that it took me well into my 20s before I could even talk about it. When were you able to talk about going through what you went through?
Honestly, I've always been able to talk about things. As soon as I am able to become aware of them myself, I can usually articulate them to someone. I was in therapy when I first moved to New York. I got into therapy pretty soon after that. And and I always knew that if you're going to be in therapy, you better be honest with yourself and with your therapist. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. And I wanted to get better. So I learned how to express things there. But I think I don't know that I was really aware. I kept going back and forth, like, am I really an alcoholic? Because I got sober when I was 24. So back in the 80s, that was pretty young. There weren't too many of my theater friends who were, putting down the booze and drugs at that point, So
But I also know, excuse me for interrupting, but being in the world of theater, and especially at that time, I remember after a show, after a rehearsal, everybody wants to go to the local pub. Everybody wants to drink. Everybody wants to let their hair down. And I never did go that route, but I was with everyone else who was drinking and having a good time. And it's very easy to go down that path.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. New York City brought out the worst in my addictions, definitely. It was a very tough time for me. I definitely hit rock bottom when I lived there. And but I just kept going back and forth, am I just, at the age where I like to party too much, or do I really have a problem? And I think a lot of alcoholics are in denial.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God for me, I was aware enough to know that I had a problem, and I also, another thing, I'd go to auditions, and you have to, back then especially, where you had to go, if you got to the dance portion in a Broadway show, you had to put on a leotard and go out there and dance around. And when I was drinking, I would come home in a blackout and start eating. That was kind of part of it. So I was also a food addict. Like I said, I mean, I've lost 75 pounds. So sugar is sugar, alcohol is made of sugar, and I was a sugar addict. So I almost, part of the reason I wanted to stop drinking was so that I wouldn't put on any weight, So it was like a twofold thing. And so I knew I had to stop, but I did not go to AA right away. I just stopped. I actually stopped. I was at a friend's. I went to a friend's house on Long Island, and she was a bartender. So one night I was just sitting at her bar, and I made the decision I wasn't going to drink that night. And it was Valentine's Day. And so I just decided I was going to see if I could get through the day without drinking. And I mean, oh my God, that was so hard. It was
self-love. That's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But and then I thought, okay, let me just see if I can do it tomorrow. And then it was like, okay, let me see if I can get through the weekend. So I did it pretty much on my own, cold turkey, which I don't recommend, but it was just how I did it. And I didn't start going to AA meetings until a few years later, because I was really white knuckling it, as they say, just kind of holding on by my fingernails, and I needed support. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, yeah, I mean, but do you mind if I ask the type of drinker you were? And what I mean by that is my father was not a social drinker. Mm-hmm. He drank alone. He would buy his booze, and he would drink at home. He didn't go to bars. He didn't drink he didn't have drinking buddies. He drank alone, and we dealt with that within the confines of our home. Yeah. Some people go out and drink with their friends and do that. But were you drinking with friends? And if you were, sometimes that becomes difficult to stop because they all are egging you on. Where were you as far as all of that was concerned?
Well, I started going to bars when I was like 15 years old. I looked very mature for my age. And there was a bar in town that the bartender was like, So, and my father was an alcoholic. I was raised in an Irish home where, we drank hot toddies if we were sick, so, booze was just there, right? So my dad was, he would drink if we had company over, and he would, well, Carissa looks a little different. So we would anyway, for myself. So I was a social drinker when I was younger. And then I started to become more isolated as the disease took over. But I did drink with other people. And, my theater friends, they all were heavy drinkers. So when I tried to stop, it was difficult to be around them. And, I think I started to really isolate myself after I stopped drinking, because all of my friends were drinking way too much. So it was difficult to be around them and watch them all party, So yeah, it was, but my dad definitely was a isolated drinker, but he drank, towards the end, he was drinking all the time, most of the day. But he still functioned. That was the thing. He had a very thriving, successful construction company in Florida. So it's amazing what people can do when they're high,
So when you stopped drinking, and did you ever through that period slip, or was it cold turkey for you?
Yeah, I never slipped.
Good for you. And you said that you did not start AA until several years later.
Right.
What was the decision that made you decide years later to go to AA?
So I have, these are dark subjects, but here we go. I have,
if you're okay with this.
I am.
Okay.
I have a history of anxiety and depression that I did not really understand that I had been self-medicating with alcohol. So one night after I stopped drinking, I was still smoking pot. But one night, a friend of mine came over and we smoked some pot, and I just absolutely kind of lost my mind. I just had major panic attack, and it was horrible. And from that time on, I was so terrified. It was such. I lived in a state of incredible panic and anxiety from that moment on for years and years and years. I mean, literally, it was horrible until and so I started going to AA meetings because I needed faith. I needed something, and I needed something to hold on to. So I started going to AA meetings, and as much as they were a comfort to a degree, I actually found out that I needed medication. And, I needed to be on antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication. And this was the late 80s. So it wasn't as readily common as it is now, or a normal thing, like, get yourself some Prozac, or, get yourself on antidepressants, or, and I actually, I said to this psychiatrist I went to see, I was telling him about all of these things, like not being able to go into the mall, or, that's really the reason I left New York, was I was having such terrible panic attacks. I could not handle walking down the street with all of those people. It was terrifying to me. So I moved. And when I did finally see a psychiatrist, many, like maybe 7 years later or something, I told him all these things, and I, I said, I feel like I'm crazy. And he said, you're not crazy. You have a mood disorder. And that was like such a relief for somebody to tell me I wasn't crazy, and now I know that. And, you know, it's miraculous how things can change, you know, and some of us just need medication. I have a girlfriend who calls it our chemical soup, you know. I mean, we come into this world, we've got DNA from, and my mother had terrible anxiety. My father was the alcoholic. So I kind of got both. And that's just the way it is, you know. I mean, you can't help what you come in with. Somebody comes in with, you know, some other form of, you know, possible like diabetes or, you know, whatever. It's an illness, you know, and that's what people have to understand. There's not as much of a stigma around it now, you know. So, I mean, when you said, when you said, was it easy for you to talk about these things? The anxiety and depression, that was incredibly hard to talk to people about, because I thought they would think I was nuts. They wouldn't want to hear it. You know what I mean? Like they would back off of wanting to get to know me. But that was a big part of who I was back then. And yeah, I didn't talk about it much.
So when you make the move that you're going to get out of New York, you're going to move on to essentially take care of yourself, to heal yourself.
Yeah.
Was that a gradual decision, or like the cold turkey? Was it, I'm out of here?
Yeah, pretty much cold turkey. I mean, honestly, I grew up in Florida, and to live in New York was overwhelming for me. Like, I grew up on a beach town, you know, and you drive your car up to the road where the beach is, you grab your towel and you walk down a path and you're on the beach. So, and then to live in New York in the summer was intense, because there was no getting away from, you know, if you don't have a car. And I mean, the idea.
If I ask you what year it was that you came to New York?
I think it was 1980.
So it was a very different New York as well.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. I came in 79, so I know exactly what it was.
Yeah. We used to go up on the roof and lay, you know, of my building on the blacktop. You know, it was like, what the hell? This is sun tanning.
I know.
With baby oil, for God's sake, you know. So, yeah, there was no escaping, you know, to go to the beach or be out in the sun. And, you know, there was no way I was going to get on a train and travel for an hour and a half to the beach and then come back from there all hot and, you know.
I'll tell everyone, one of my worst experiences, I went to Central Park to get some sun. And I was working at the time at a high-rise. The Bristol Plaza had just opened. And I had gotten this job, very exclusive, high-rise. Bill McLaughlin worked there. I mean, lived there. So many important people. I fell asleep.
Oh.
And someone stole my clothes.
Oh, my God.
And I had to walk through Central Park, and I had to go into the Bristol Plaza where I was in my 20s wearing just like a Speedo.
Oh my God.
And the person at the front desk was like, oh my God, what are you doing here? And I said, just let me get to my locker, because I had a uniform there.
Thank God.
So it was just like the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me in New York.
That's like a bad dream.
It was a bad dream, but it happened.
That everyone has.
Everybody has. So you move out of New York. You are starting a new life for yourself. What were the steps that you began to put yourself together again and to really, let's say, reinvent yourself?
Yeah. So I think one of the first things I did was I found myself a therapist, you know, because I had a therapist in New York City. So that was one consistent thing that I knew I needed. So I found a therapist, found a massage therapist.
Excuse me for interrupting, because how does one know if one has never had a therapist, how does one know how to find the right therapist for them?
Well, this is really interesting because I just did it on intuition. And you know what happened? I went into a health food store, right? So, and I asked the people in the health food store, who seemed very nice, you know, it was real crunchy granola back then. And I said, first thing I was looking for was a massage therapist because I had done, you know, all sorts of massage. I loved getting massages when I lived in the city. And I asked them if they knew a good one, and they recommended someone. And it was the woman's business was in this old Victorian house that had a turret, and it was this beautiful, like a front porch, wraparound porch, and it was just so beautiful. And I walked in, and I thought, and I noticed that there were therapists listed on the front wall. And I thought, and I walked in, and it was all oak, you know, that beautiful old light oak with the beautiful staircase. And I was in heaven. I mean, I grew up in New York, Florida, where everything was, you know, concrete and one floor and all of that. So I fell in love with this building, and I asked the massage therapist, you know, is there a good therapist here? And I just took a chance, you know, and found someone I really liked a lot. And the interesting thing is, my future husband was a therapist in that building, and he had renovated that house into what it was at the point where I walked through the door. So I was feeling his energy there, you know. So it's just one of those things that was meant to be, right? So as far as a therapist goes, that's a tough, you know, finding one for yourself. That's I think it's best to ask people, you know. I think it's important to, you know, go through word of mouth, go through referral for a therapist. And that's such a personal thing. There are so many different kinds of therapy, you know.
Now, when you moved out of New York, you moved to Newport, Rhode Island.
I did.
And why Newport? And you've made this your home, and you feel that, I mean, you really have made your life there.
Yeah. Well, what happened was I got a job in Jamestown, Rhode Island, which is right across the bridge from Newport. Jamestown is this beautiful little island. And I was working for the summer doing cabaret shows. That was my first experience with cabaret, was doing cabaret shows 6 nights a week. It was just like this great little review. And we cocktail waitressed, you know, in the intermissions and all that. So I spent the summer, and this hotel was right on the bay. So I had a beautiful view from my, you know, bedroom window of this beautiful bridge overlooking Newport, you know. So, and I loved it. I became friends with the owner's daughter of the hotel. So I just kept going up to Newport to visit, you know. And so that's kind of how it happened. I knew that I couldn't stay in New York anymore, and I didn't want to move back to Florida. I had always thought that New England was this, you know, such a romantic place, coming from Florida, where everything's green and hot, you know, 365 days a year. So I thought snow and foliage was the most amazing thing. And so anyway, that's how I came to be here. And I love where I live. I think it's amazing. You know, it's beautiful. Have you ever been up here?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, Newport is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. I love Newport.
Yeah.
But, you know, moving forward, you also became a life coach yourself. How did that transformation begin to happen in your life?
So I realized that talk therapy has kind of a shelf life, if you will. For me, it only goes so far. And also AA, I found that there was something missing in that for me as well. So, and I'm a seeker. And so I found a book, and it's interesting. The title of the show tonight is Finding Light in the Darkness or something. Mm-hmm. So the book I found, I was seeking. My daughters were in grade school at the time, and I found myself at the local library just looking. And I loved my husband, I loved my life, I loved my kids, but I was still feeling there was something missing. So I found this book on tape called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was all about integrating the shadow side of ourselves, because we all have dark and light within us, right? And it was about kind of, Jungian stuff where you really do look at that, the underbelly of who you are, the things you don't want anyone to see, and accept that about yourself and see that it had a purpose, so you integrate that into the side that you want everybody to see, And anyway, so I read this book. The woman who wrote it was an addict who had recovered. She actually lived in Fort Lauderdale, around the same time that I did, had gone to a few treatment centers. So there was a lot that I could associate and what do I want to say? Anyway, I could really relate to her. So she was a very spiritual person. And so I started following her. I started doing workshops with her. I started going to workshops at places. Have you ever been to Omega in Rhinebeck?
No, I don't think so.
Oh my God, you have to go there. It's this wonderful retreat center. The grounds are gorgeous. They have all sorts of really interesting speakers and workshop leaders from all different kinds of, spiritual teachers. And it's an amazing place. But anyway, so I would go to her workshops, and then I decided that I had done everything I could. And then it was, okay, what else can I do? And the next thing was to be certified as one of her, through her school of life coaching, So I did that. So I became certified with her. And then I went into, I realized that I wanted something even deeper. So I became certified as a consultant with the Proctor Gallagher Institute, which is run by Bob Proctor, who is one of the preeminent teachers of the law of vibration, the law of attraction. He's been teaching it since the early 70s. I mean, he's really one of the master teachers of that, before it was even fashionable, before people even talked about the law of attraction. So so that's what I've been doing since, and I love that. I love how it all combines with science and spirituality, and seeing people transform and really understand the power of their mind and who they really are is inspirational,
How has it changed you? From starting, as they say in the song, if you become a teacher, by your pupils, you'll be taught. It's so true. How has it changed you?
Yeah, well, I think when I started to do this new kind of coaching with Bob, was when I really was able to let go of this food addiction. I mean, I'm always going to be a food addict, but that was when I really transformed my health and, was able to let go of the extra weight, because I realized if I was going to be the kind of coach I wanted to be, I really needed to feel good about myself and be a product of the product. And I was also singing and not I did not want to get up. I hated having to go to a clothing store and just make do with some outfit to sing for my, to perform for my cabaret show. And it was like, I just didn't want to do that anyway. So that was a big, because I had kind of given up that I would ever be able to lose that kind of weight ever. I just didn't think I was going to be able to do it because I had tried everything, so that was great. And then, my husband passed away and I had 2 little kids.
Do you mind if I go back for a little moment?
Yeah.
I wanted to go in, I wanted to talk about that. Everything seems to be going wonderfully in your life. And then your husband was diagnosed with cancer.
Mhm.
Can you talk for a moment about the impact of that happening on your life and your family? You've got 2 young children at home. And then with everything seeming to go, you're living where you want to live. You've got the house that you want. You've got the husband. You've got the children. You've got the American dream. And then this happens.
Yeah.
So if you can take us back to that, because you are writing a book about this, or you're writing a chapter
I
about
am.
this now.
Yeah. So it's pretty fresh in my mind this week, especially. Yeah. So my husband, like I said, I met him. He was a therapist and he was a holistic counselor before that was even fashionable, because he was doing energy work with people. He was doing past life regression. He was doing hypnosis. And this was the early 80s, right? So that was what he was into. And I was fascinated by all of that. He kind of opened up I was fascinated by it, but then when I met him, I became really involved in that, and I loved it. We had a real spiritual connection, he and I. And so he decided he was going to, he found being a therapist a pretty lonely profession. So he decided he'd always loved horticulture. And he was a very creative person. So he always had a knack for putting colors together. And, he was, when Queer Eye came out and they called people metrosexual,
Yes.
like he was that. He was that.
Oh, wonderful.
He was Italian. He was an amazing cook. Oh my God. He was so good. So anyway, so he got into horticulture design, gardening. So he was involved in that. We had 2 little kids, 4 and 6. And if there was a person that I was always obsessed with my health. And I thought if anybody were to get sick, it would be me. But he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And I was like shocked. Obviously, we were all shocked when that happens. And so the thing about that was he decided after a lot of research that he didn't want to have his prostate out. So he did what's called watchful waiting, which, anyway, so he went to Switzerland twice for a month at a time. Oh, was it Switzerland or it was Germany? He went to Germany on 2 different occasions for a month at a time because they had different medical treatments that weren't approved here in the US. So he did that. He did all sorts of cleanses. He did psychic, energy work. He did see doctors. It wasn't that he was totally off that, but he saw functional medicine doctors. He did, all sorts of different treatments. And he had the faith that he was going to heal himself from this disease. So I was terrified, I was like, oh my God, just have the fucking thing out, and, but he didn't want to do that. And, he had gone to school he had gone to seminary school. So his belief in God was something that I did not have, so he expected himself to get well. I mean, and like I said, it wasn't that he was sitting around doing nothing. I mean, he did everything except have it out. I mean, he even went to New York and saw a special doctor for a Doppler ultrasound, so he could monitor everything. So for the first 7 years of his cancer, he was doing really pretty well. Meanwhile, every time he went to Switzerland and everything, I'm home with 2 girls. I'm anxious as could be about all of this because, I would go to my doctor and the doctor would say, what the hell is he doing? He needs to get that thing out. Why isn't he doing that? And, that all played on my anxiety. So it was really hard. And then in the last 8th year of his illness, it went to his spine and into his lymph nodes. And that was it. So he was still holding out hope that he was going to be okay, which was really hard for me to hold on to. I mean, I was a wreck, and it's a long story. I mean,
but his faith kept him going.
It did. I mean, for the first 7 years, he was kind of like, he was kind of a role model for the community that he was in, as far as the people who were, he was working with medically, who were like the people, the doctors in Switzerland and stuff like that. So, I mean, he was always in contact with them and trying new treatments and injecting mistletoe and all sorts of stuff that I could tell you about. But yeah, and then once he got sick, it was he lost 6 inches. His spine collapsed, so he shrunk by 6 inches, and getting up the stairs, I would have to put 1 foot on each step for him to get up to bed, and help him get into bed. And it was grueling. It was really grueling for him and for me. I was his sole caregiver. We didn't have family around us, so it was just
and
me.
2 small children.
Exactly.
I can't even imagine what you were going through.
Yeah, it was, I ate a lot. I wanted to run away. I couldn't take it anymore. I mean, and part of what I was writing about in this book was, as a caregiver, you feel guilty about that. It's like, I want to run away. I mean, I was there for every test, everything that I needed to be there for. I was there. Even when I didn't believe in what he was doing, I supported him, for his decision as best I could. But as a caregiver, when you're going through all of that and you don't have, I had girlfriends that I would talk to every day on the phone, but they had families and jobs. And luckily they had husbands who were healthy. So they didn't know they couldn't understand what that was like. They tried and empathized as best they could. But at the time, I didn't know where to go for help, for how I was feeling. I was angry. I was depressed. I was
Well, I was going to ask you, what
exhausted.
kind of a support system did you have?
I didn't. I mean, I had been out of therapy, and then I went back into therapy at the very end because I thought I was going to really lose it, and my kids at that point were, when Michael died, my oldest was 16 and my youngest was 14. So, those are, at any age a kid loses their dad is a tough age, so.
How were they able to process it?
Well, the thing was, Michael didn't want to talk about it because he wanted to stay in the vibration of being that he was healing himself. So this is where all of the spiritual stuff, I have a hard time with that idea. And I've known people who talk about especially now they're in this community that I am in, talk about being able to heal your physical self. And I really have a hard time with that. As much as I coach people on you can create whatever you want, if you want it badly enough, I look at my husband and I think, I don't know anybody who could have wanted it, and who lived in that belief that he could have it. I mean, I remember one night he said, I was like, I know you believe that you can do this. And he said, it's not just that I believe, I expect to heal myself from this. I mean, that's a pretty powerful thing, it's to expect it. So when he couldn't, and there were a lot of times, not very many times where he would actually talk about the idea of passing over because he didn't want to be in that place with it. So what that did for us as a family was my kids really didn't get an opportunity to process his death before he actually passed over because he didn't really want to talk in those terms. It was really, looking back, I have a lot of regrets, but what can you do if someone, it's their life, it's their choice. Even if it's your husband, that's how he wanted to deal with it, So
it's interesting because, I'm the executor of a very dear friend of mine who passed away in December. And I am finding out that she was, and some friends may be watching, that she was a little bit sicker than we knew that she was.
Yeah.
But she didn't want anyone to know that she was sick. And it was a pride thing that she was not telling anyone that she was sick. So she went to the hospital on Tuesday, had a colonoscopy on Wednesday. I spoke with her Thursday night, and she died on Friday, 20 minutes after leaving the hospital.
Was this just this past week, Richard?
No, this was in December.
Oh, okay.
And so you and I have talked about the stages of grief. I was very, first of all, the fact that I spoke with her the night before and we were planning Christmas and then to get the call the next morning that she had passed away less than 24 hours after we spoke.
Wow.
Was a shock. But then to find out that what I felt could have been prevented if she had been open about how ill she had been.
Right.
I think it could have been prevented.
Yeah.
And I don't know which is the worst of the equation, to go suddenly or to linger in a situation like this. Here you go through this process for years when, as you said, there were other options.
Right.
But looking back over this, your husband made the choices that he made.
Yeah.
And it was his life to make those choices.
It was. Yeah. Yeah. It's, a few of my girlfriends are still angry with him. Like, how could he do that? And, but, there's one thing I do want to talk about because this chapter in the book, I felt very guilty because after he died, I felt relieved because I was so tired and it had been going on for so long that I felt so badly about saying that. But when I started to talk about,
you just said that.
When I started to talk about,
did the same thing. Yes.
What's that?
A friend of mine who lost her husband after a long illness went through the same thing.
Yeah. So what I found when I started to work on this chapter was someone told me there was a term for it when you go through long-term care as a caregiver, anticipatory grief. And I was like, whoa, it was kind of like when the psychiatrist said to me, you're not crazy. It was the same kind of thing because it's the same stages of grief, but you're going through it from the minute you find out that your loved one is potentially going to die.
Mm-hmm.
You start going through denial, fear, anger, depression, isolation, just wanting to escape. And so the process of grief, you've already been going through it. So when they pass, it's like, okay, I've done a lot of this already, and they're, it's so hard to be a caregiver. And, maybe for some people it's not, but for me, it was extremely difficult. And, but I felt like I was finally relieved of a burden that was just unbearable for me anymore. Now, after that, I had to deal with my kids and their grief, which still goes on today. And that's been 12 years. So I grieved the loss of my partner and my children's father, who was a great dad. So, it just kind of morphed into something else. But I love that term, anticipatory grief. It just gave me such consolation, to understand, like, what I wasn't a bad person.
I want to ask you, you're writing a chapter. This is
Right.
part of another book. You're not writing a full book on grief.
No, it's just a collection of other women's stories. It's called Shining a Light on Grief. And
I want to ask you, writing a chapter, imagine writing a whole book on this, but writing this chapter, you are essentially reliving all of this all over again.
Yeah.
What is this experience like for you going back, and it brings us to Kassira's book again. You let that go. Kassira talks in the book about these stories that we relive over and over and over again. You and I spoke earlier this week. I went through a situation, as you know, that I won't go into right now, but with the end of a friendship. It may return, it may not, I don't know. But it was a painful situation to go through.
Yeah.
But sometimes we go through life where we perpetrate these stories that we tell.
Yeah.
We will tell these stories with our friends. Well, she did this and she did that. And she did this. And I've reached this point where I am saying to my friends, she has her story to tell. Let her tell her story. And I'm not telling that story anymore. And we all have a story to tell. You're telling your story from your point of view of grief and what you're going through. What do you hope that the readers are going to come away with from reading your story of grief?
Yeah. So, every woman who is contributing to this book has a different story. What I am trying to relate and what I hope the reader gets, I'm really focusing on the caregiving aspect of it and the honest feelings that I had when I was going through that, and that whole idea of maybe it's okay to be relieved. Also, the whole spiritual component to it. How do you make sense out of somebody dying and hold a space for honoring how they choose to deal with it, and that's huge too. Then there's this other thing, so that's my answer is basically from the caregiver's perspective, as opposed, to more of grieving after somebody's passed.
I want to ask you before we run out of time, did anything in your life prepare you for this?
No. It's like marriage or babies. Nothing
Yeah.
prepares you for that.
Nothing prepares you for it. Yeah, we have a friend, and she had a very long marriage, and everyone, and she had a happy marriage. And when her husband got ill and passed away, she said that when her husband passed away after a long illness, and she wrote something in her book that she was embarrassed that she wrote this in the book. And she's published several books, and she ran it by her sons. And she said, I want you to read this before I publish it, because I don't know how people are going to process this.
Yeah.
And what she had written in the book was that she found after her husband had passed away, and they were a prominent couple, people knew them, that she was skipping down the street. And because she felt that this burden had been lifted off of her after so long of dealing with this. And so I am I want to bring up on screen here for just a moment. I want people to know that they can get in touch with you. You have a website, patricemckenley.com. There's so much more to you. We haven't even scratched the surface tonight. You're an entertainer yourself. What's next for you as far as the entertainment realm is concerned?
Well, I love to do the kinds of shows I like to do are inspirational shows about life's journey, and how I really like to tie it in with my coaching, and help people understand that they can, create anything they want with their beliefs and their imagination and all of that. So those are really the kinds of shows that I put together. So I'm hoping, as I was telling you earlier, since I live here in Newport, I do go down. I am part of Lena Katrakis's cabaret workshop that she does every Saturday. So luckily for me, with COVID, there was a lot of time on Zoom. So I got to be there every week. But I usually try to get down to New York and be part of the class every other week. So I am putting together a show, which I'll probably do in the fall. Doesn't have a name yet. I'm not sure about.
Keep me posted, because I will try to be there. God,
I would love that.
I would love it too. And you and I are going to stay in touch, I hope.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Enough people did not, sign up with the hashtag connection tonight. So we're not going to do a giveaway tonight, but I do want to show a couple of things here. This is my friend Erin Kalev tonight with my new Richard Skipper Celebrates mug. There I am.
There you are.
And then she got the Let That Go book.
Oh, so, that's great.
There she is. And I am so sorry that Kasira did not make it on tonight. I'm going to give her a call as soon as we're over tonight and find out what happened. I want to thank everybody who did make it here tonight, however. Thank you for being here. And Patrice, thank you so much. Don't go anywhere for a moment. Everyone, you can still go out and buy Let That Go. You also have products on your site for sale, don't you?
Well, that's my coaching program that I take people through. So when I talk to them in person or on Zoom, and they decide to become part of my coaching process, then that is the program that I take them through. So yeah, but I also want to say I have a mastermind group that I have on Facebook. That's a private group that is called Expecting Results Mastermind. And I am going to be doing a 3-day workshop on the 15th, 16th, and 17th on my Facebook page, where I'm going to be teaching the principles that I coach people on. So if anybody wants to be a part of that, yay!
Send me the information, please.
Yes. So I will send it to you. And if anybody wants to, they can send me a personal message on Patrice McKinley, my regular Facebook page. And I would love to have anybody and everybody that wants to be part of that and learn how you can really create the life you love by just changing your mindset.
Absolutely. And I do believe that wholeheartedly. Don't let go of that. That's one thing we don't let go of.
No,
So
we
everyone,
don't.
thank you for being here tonight. Please, if you are not a subscriber to richardskippercelebrates.com, please subscribe, leave a comment on YouTube. Please leave a comment on Facebook. Let people know about this channel. Let other people know about this. I'm hoping that Kasira will be back with me next Sunday. Remember, we move our clocks ahead next Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
So spring ahead.
Can you believe it?
I know we're springing ahead. So that's next Sunday. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and go to the 6th name that pops up and reach out with a phone call. And call that person. Actually, go out and buy 2 copies of this book. Keep one for yourself and send the 6th friend a copy of this book, and you'll be helping Kasira out, and you'll be helping a friend out as well. And just reach out with a phone call, not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call. As my dear friend Sean Moniger says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And I always say, if you're going to go out in a boat, make sure you bring a skipper along. Now, Patrice, I'm going to leave the screen and I'm going to give you the final word. Anything you want to say about anything we've talked about tonight that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to leave everyone with tonight? Don't worry about how to end the show. As soon as you say goodbye, the credits will roll. Thank you. And send me all the information and we'll stay in touch. Thank you so much.
Bye.
And have a great night. So it's all yours.
Oh, man. Well, put me on the spot here. Well, I just want to say thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Richard is such a sweet, sweet guy, and this has been a lot of fun for me. I just want to leave you with this idea that you have unlimited potential within you, that you are an energetic being, a spiritual being, however you want to look at it. And you have the power to create anything you want. And the only thing holding you back is your belief. If you really think about what it is you would truly love to be doing, your heart's desire, and allow yourself to imagine that and not shut the door on it because you think you're too old, too young, too not smart enough, don't have the knowledge to do it. None of that matters. It's what really makes your heart sing. Your heart's desire is what you always want to be thinking about. And if you trust your heart's desire and you start moving towards that with the right intention and the right thought process of continuing to tell yourself that you have it and you deserve it and it's okay to go for it, you will get to a whole new level of awareness and your life will never be the same because that's the way to create anything you want and you deserve anything you want. So I wish you a really lovely Sunday evening and I hope to see you again very soon. And take care.